So I started this work about a year and a half ago, and it started to, over time, I realized that the work around the cervix, it's bigger than just the cervix. And, that we can get really hung up on the results of the orgasm, of the healing, of the pleasure, and they're incredible, incredible results. But what's equally important is what happens along the journey. Because the thing with cervical orgasm and cervical healing and cervical pleasure is it's a transformational process. This is personal transformation and development. So you can have a mind shift in an instant, but when it comes to reconditioning your body and healing wounds of the past and opening up new pleasure pathways, this takes time. And so the cervix provides us with this incredible mirror to ourselves if we take a moment to really look at what the practice is offering us. So for those of you who are not familiar with the work, Self Cervix runs these 21-day containers where we basically shut the doors and we give ourselves this 3-week period of time to work on healing and awakening the pleasure portal that is the cervix. So you might not know the cervix to be pleasurable. In fact, I'm going to say, like, the majority of women I talk to, they either feel uncomfortable there, they don't want to touch it, they feel pain, or they feel nothing. So this idea that it is this pleasure place is curious, and we want to know more about it. And so we're on this adventure together, trying to understand what is there for us when we start to heal and awaken. And the interesting thing is that, we meet ourselves, and we meet through our injury, through our lack of feeling, or through our pain, or through our discomfort, and through our pleasure. We meet aspects of ourselves that we can bring into every aspect of our lives. So I always see the cervix as this incredible teacher. So so what I'll do now is I'm going to start the webinar and take you through a little bit of it, and then we'll get to the teachings. So just bear with me while I share my screen with you. Okay, so you should be able to see the screen now, hopefully. So I'm calling this the 5 frenemies of cervical awakening because it's exactly that, those things that are challenging and they feel like they push us off course are actually the very keys and the teachers that can bring us into a more deeper sense of self, and which is exactly where we're going with the cervix. So what are we here for? So I want to teach you about these five key behaviors that block cervical pleasure. Now, look, there's probably more, but I wanted to, what are the 5 that are the most prevalent, that seem to come up a lot? And then these messages that we collectively buy into that hold us back. So I'll share 2 of the strong messages that come through about our sexuality that really kind of put a block in the way to possibility. And then I'm going to give you an antidote to these behaviors so that you can start looking at them and shifting them immediately. And so at the end of this class, I want you to should be able to identify some of these areas. And then, even if it's just one little thing that you can do to make a difference. And, awareness is the first step. And so that is a great way to start. And if you are not in the program and you're interested in joining, hang around until the end and I'll share a special offer with you. So this is for you if you have a cervix. Even if you've had a cervix removed, you can still work with the energy surrounding the cervix. You might want to bring your partner in to learn about the cervix. That's totally fine. I use the word cervixin and woman interchangeably, cervixin being a gender neutral term because I recognize that not everybody with a cervix identifies with the word woman. So here we go. So this is me in Bali. Just after I experienced the session with a bodyworker named Matt Schwentek that would change the course of my life, and I'd actually was working in sexology and working as a coach in this area, and I had a heartbreak, and I made a decision after that I was going to give up all this work with intimacy and sexuality. And I thought, well, who am I to teach this stuff? And what do I know? And I don't even feel like sex. And so I thought, but I will go and fix my pelvis, because the impact of the heart pain was closing me down. And I'll actually talk about that later in the webinar. So I had the courage to go and have what we call a de-armoring session to release tension. And in that session, I discovered my numb cervix, which led me on a journey of trying to heal it and awaken the potential as a pleasure organ. And I was pretty dedicated to my practice for the first 6 months, and managed to shift and cause orgasmic pleasure from my cervix. And I've also been on the other side of it, where I've shut down completely from my practice and decided, like, oh, again, probably heart closed me down, and that part of the body just doesn't want to open when the heart is closed down. And so I kind of put it to the side for a while, and then I really noticed the next time that I went and had sex just how much sensation had dulled out again, because that's one of the impacts of working with this part of the body. Is the way we work with it is we're on a mission to try to create new neural pathways to pleasure, but also release the tension that we hold in this area so that we can feel more and become more sensitive. So sex during the practice was very sensitive and awareness based, and I'd just be like, oh, just hold there, and wouldn't have to do much, and it would just be like ripples of pleasure. And then I just stopped my practice, and I needed a lot more kind of friction, and it was far less connected. So I really learned that this is a life practice here, where we're tending to this sacred part of our bodies, both our cervix and our internal vagina. So that is what brought me into this practice. And so just in case you are unclear, the cervix sits there at the top of the vagina. It forms the base of the uterus, and it moves around depending on posture, trauma, tension. So it might be forward or back or to the sides. And that was new to me when I first started feeling my cervix. I was completely off the mark for at least the first 3 weeks, until I really found it like hanging out right over to the left. And it feels like the tip of your nose, sort of firmer than the rest of your vaginal tissue, and it moves up and down. So if you're comfortable touching yourself during your period, that's when it's at its lowest and it's the easiest to reach. So I highly recommend meeting your cervix, since it is really one of the only places inside of our bodies that that is really effective, and yet we can't see it. And so I highly recommend going and meeting her if you haven't already, and feeling what shape she's in. She might have scar tissue if you've ever had any of the procedures that cut into the cervix. So she may be feeling numb, or she may be feeling uncomfortable or painful, or she may be feeling like, some people describe it like a second clitoris inside of the body, which is kind of cool. So let's get straight into it. So 5 frenemies of cervical awakening and their antidotes. So when thinking about this, I decided to make this one number 1 and number 2, though it could have been an entire webinar on this. Self-avoidance is one of the ways we block our potential for feeling what's actually there to be felt. And we can, this is not just about the cervix, but we see it when we come to practice with our pleasure body and with our healing, is that we come into all of our habits where we avoid ourselves. And there are many, many ways that we avoid ourselves. A great way is through overaction. So overcompensating, overfunctioning, being a superwoman so that we don't actually have to be with ourselves and be quiet with ourselves. And so we're an amazing mother and an amazing worker and an amazing um, like lover and a partner. And, and what about us? These can be awesome strategies of covering, being the overachiever. I know for me that I will dive into my work as a way of not feeling. So we need to start feeling and coming into, well, what is there and what am I trying to avoid? And we could do this with clitoral orgasm as well. So it's like, I might find during my practice that I just check out because my reasoning is I get bored or I can't feel anything. And so I'm like, oh, what about clitoral orgasm? I want to feel something. And so I go to the easier or the stronger feeling to instead of saying, hey, wait, what if I just paused to see what's going on underneath that feeling of boredom or that feeling of wanting to check out? So, other addictions. So that would fall into the categories of addictions with the cervical orgasm. Simply not having a relationship to your cervix is a way of, is a reason why we would avoid, because why would we want to have a relationship with our cervix? It just seems like an unnecessary pastime, luxury. But let me tell you, it is not. You talk to anyone who's had cervical trauma, had a cervix removed, and they will say that it feels like they've lost their center, that they've lost a part of themselves. When we start to come into relationship with our cervix, we connect to a deeper place inside of our very being. This is, in the world of chakras, the second chakra, so your place of creativity, how creative we are there. Right? What if it's numb and blocked and painful? And our place of sexuality, sensuality, this openness. So it's this water element. And look, we can tend to freeze up in this area and stop this flow. So we start to, we come into touch with our cervix and we start to open these things that are so, so key to us as women, as cervixins. Putting your attention on others is another way of self-avoiding. So during pleasure is a great one where you might say, okay, that's enough time on me and let's focus on you. And, this is an old conditioning, an old trait, I don't deserve, I'm not worthy, I'm taking too long, because we've got our eyes on this goal. And what we're learning to do here is receive, really, truly receive for ourselves. And I know for myself, receiving compliments is hard, let alone receiving the 20 minutes to 1 hour worth of attention that the cervix requires. Like, you read a book by someone like David Data, who works with helping women awaken the cervix. And he will say he would spend an hour on a woman's cervix. So are you willing to give yourself that, to request that, to ask for that? So this feeling of worthiness is a major reason why we actually block that potential. We simply don't give it the time, or we deflect and put our attention on others. So fear, going inside, it is a vulnerable thing. Maybe you've had cervical trauma. You've had lasering, you've had cutting. Maybe you're afraid you're going to hurt yourself. Maybe you're afraid you're going to re-traumatize yourself, and all of this stuff is going to come up. So there's a couple of things here. And the first thing is to, I'm going to go into this here. The first thing is, yes, it can be scary, because going deeply into your vulnerability, it is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. So you've got to cultivate courage and trust, because your cervix is very, very strong, actually. It is a huge, look what it does. It's a very strong place in your body. So it can handle touch, it can handle pressure. However, yes, you might be feeling this kind of repulsion or nausea This is part of your body's like defense mechanism. So it's really important to go gently and listen. So this is where the cervix teaches us listening. What is okay for me right now? And then where is my mind coming in and blocking this potential? So what we got to listen to is our hearts, our emotions, and our body sensations. Be really wary of the mind. I've changed my my thoughts on this, actually. Changed my feelings, should I say, on this. I used to say we need all of these centers to be aligned, but actually sometimes your head can throw you right into a story. So it's not always the most reliable source of information. If trauma comes up, you can seek more assistance. However, we are learning here how to reparent and repartner ourselves through this work. And I'll get to that in a second. So feeling the feelings and not the story that's making the feelings, if you know what I mean, because we can get sucked into the story and then we're feeling the feelings. But what is the actual source of those feelings? So here's an example. It's not related to my cervix. It's related to my heart. So I did, okay, confession. I did the Facebook stalk. I looked at my ex's profile in a moment of self-sabotage, and I noticed he was in a new relationship, and I got super upset. I was upset, but then I had to ask myself, hold on a second. It's not that I'm upset about. That's just this story of like, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm replaceable, all of that shit. But what is really the feeling? And the feeling is always old. It's always old feelings of abandonment and rejection. And so I go be with that little one in me. So when this stuff happens, when you're awakening the cervix and grief comes up and you're remembering stuff of the past, what is the root of that feeling? And go be with that. Yeah? Because we can get really caught up in our victim story. Where we really need to do is address the source wound. Yeah. And that was a massive breakthrough for me. So don't be afraid of these things, because they are there to bring you into a new level of loving, right? Of integrating those forgotten parts. And sometimes we don't want to go in, we want to avoid ourselves because we're afraid of our own power. And so we do anything not to awaken the dragon within. Because if we awaken the dragon within, then what happens? We might get into conflict. And if you don't like conflict, this is an issue. We might start to say no. We might start to have boundaries. We might have to make changes. And so, of course, we want to avoid it. And what we're being asked and invited to do is build the fortitude and the inner strength to cope with these changes. And when you start to work with the cervix and you start to realize the boundaries that have been crossed, which is why we have numb cervixes or painful cervixes, yes, you start to awaken the dragon. And this is an incredible thing. It's full of self-respect and love, right? And we do learn over time, how do we do this with love? So we make a mess maybe, and then we clean it up. It's okay. But the important thing is we're integrity. We're we're integrous with ourselves. We are being with partnering ourselves, standing up for ourselves. And this is where I'm going with this. So the antidote for self-avoidance, when you're doing yourself a cervical awakening, cervical pleasure, sexual pleasure, intimacy, is always self-partnering if you're coming up against resistance. What feelings need to be validated, heard, seen? How can you have your own back? How can you be the kind of partner to yourself that allows you to receive? Like, think about what you would like from your ultimate lover. then be that for you. What do you need from this self-partnering experience that is going to allow you to have permission to open and receive? I am worthy. I am worthy. Having a partner that says that to you. So that's self-partnering, showing up for yourself, right? If you're exhausted, if you're depleted, if you're not making time for your intimacy and your connection with yourself, then this is not self-partnering. Self-partnering is saying, hey, honey, you're exhausted. Take a load off. Just go to bed and feel yourself. Touch your heart. Just place a hand on yourself and breathe. Self-partnering is saying, hey, like I deserve to be made love to, and I'm going to do it my way. Right? These are ways that we can start to see how can I show up so that I can become fuller and serve others. Because ultimately, this is what we're doing with our cervix. We are learning to heal and love ourselves so much that we are full more of the time. So reparenting, looking after your inner child if your feelings come up. And a beautiful thing that you can do with this is have a photo of yourself when you're a little girl, and then feel that child within you, still within you, and the vulnerability that that little girl is, and what she needed, and what you can give to her now. Celebrate the small wins. So often when we're on this path, like I said, it is personal development, it's transformational. We can think, oh, I'm not getting anywhere, or like, this isn't working, or I'm shit because I can't dedicate my time to it, or, I have no discipline. Instead of looking at what's not happening, self-partnering is celebrating the small wins and saying, hey, today I watched one of Olivia's videos. Today I read the group board. Today I actually spent some time and let my cervix relax. Today I did some self-pleasure practice. Today I opened myself to intimacy by opening my heart more when I didn't feel like it. So celebrate the small wins. It's really important. So good as perfectionism, covering up so that we don't have to see how great we are. So the cervix is a teacher here. It is teaching us to love ourselves and to recognize that not only when you start to source your feelings and you get oh, I'm the one feeling this thing. I'm the one feeling grief. I'm the one feeling love. It is all coming from within me. So then you start to realize that you are not something to love, but that you are love. And this is incredible. This is a beautiful learning as we start to go deep within ourselves. We see there's not something outside of us to love. We are love. So the way we a frenemy, a challenge to our cervical awakening, to our pleasure, to our healing, is putting the power out there, giving up responsibility. This is really an easy one to do. We want to find reasons why we are the way we are. And what we do here in this process of cervical awakening and healing is we are coming home. We're learning to be fully responsible for who we are and how we are. So, look, there are some harmful messages out there that contribute to this. So here's a couple. You shouldn't have to ask for what you want if the sex is good. You should just flow. It should just flow. I literally had a teacher in the Tantra world say to me, hey man, if you have to ask for what you want, then you're not surrendering. And, if you're really with a good lover and you're really in tune, sex will just flow and it will just be good. Look, that's amazing. If that happens and when that happens, it's a beautiful, magical experience. But having that expectation on our lovers and on ourselves is just cruel and it's not realistic. To have a cervically awakened experience, it requires that we are able to say, hey, I need more time. If the cervix is not out of the way, it gets bumped into, right? We get hurt. if we really want our cervixes to open, we need to ask for the time and the attention on it. We either give it to ourselves or we have a lover give it to us. And this comes from communicating and feeling safe enough and having enough trust to be able to say, here's what I want, here's what I don't want, here's what works, here's what doesn't work, here's where my attention is, here's where my pleasure is. So this is self-responsibility. It's not just leaving it to chance and hoping for a magic moment. Once you have that level of safety and you have that level of communication, surrendering becomes possible because your nervous system is safe. Here's a harmful message. Doctors are in charge and they know what they're doing. When it comes to the cervix, yes, there are some procedures that obviously you need to be trained to do. But when it comes to your body and how and when it's entered, that's your choice and your authority. In a pap smear room to say, just give me a second before you enter me. I need to relax. Relaxing. Okay, you may enter. Right? This is my sacred temple. You may enter. You don't need to say that sacred temple, but it's literally, that is the energy around it. It's like you just don't push anything inside of yourself. And the same with anybody who enters. It's not pushed in, it's given with permission. And when it's not, again, that's how we get trauma, because we tense up, we disassociate, we are not, our cervix is not properly out of the way, and so we hurt. And here's a message. This is just the way I'm built. So yeah, we're all built differently. We all have different circumstances, different histories, different nervous systems. But if you believe in neuroplasticity, then it's possible that the brain can change itself. Studies have been shown on rats whose pelvic nerve was cut, that pelvic nerve, through cervical and vaginal stimulation, grew back. And so it is possible that you can regenerate and cause more sensation at the cervix and change that sensation at the cervix. And I know because it happened to me, but it's just my body. And I also have a particular set of circumstances, and I dedicated myself to this practice. For at least 2 rounds, I practiced every day, and then in between, I practiced once a week. And then I really was feeling. So I'm just built this way. It's a good way out. But it sort of limits your own exploration and the miracle of being a human. That your body is in process all the time. That you are changing all the time, growing and learning. So don't undermine that, undercut that. Believe in that. And then you have this open space. You stop looking at what's not happening and you start going, that's different. Or maybe I felt something there. When I first started to feel cervical pleasure, it started with an itch, which was strange. It was like itchy. So yeah, I didn't know what that meant, but then it sort of shifted. So we defer responsibility. When we defer responsibility, we have someone else assume a truth for us, right? Whether it's how we're entered, when we're entered, what we want, how we're built. And this isn't generous to us. And actually, it's not generous to our lovers. Generosity is being able to tell them what we need. Generosity is being able to receive that for ourselves. So a key for this, where we're feeling disempowered, which this is really what it is, it's noticing where you feel a lack of power and freedom of expression around your cervix work or your sexuality. Where do you feel a lack of power or freedom of expression in your life? And then you know that you've got this story running in the background that says something like, there's something not quite right with me, or my voice isn't valid here. So again, this is where our practice can start to really highlight and show a mirror to where we might be giving our power away. So this is your antidote. Start to develop a relationship to your internal world, right? And this is what we do in the work. We start to feel what is right and what is not right, because we start to be able to embody more deeply. We're inside of ourselves. Start to trust yourself and find your voice. This is a hard lesson to learn. You have to start taking risks and you make mistakes, but you've got to start trusting this. So you start co-creating intimacy rather than leaving it to chance and hoping it will go great. This is an amazing opportunity to start having really co-creative conversations with your lover. And it can't come from a place of demand, complaint, or expectation, obviously. Like, I wouldn't advise you to say, hey, you know, you never give me enough attention. No wonder my cervix is still closed, or I'm not feeling it. That's not going to get you what you want. A more helpful thing could be something like, hey, you know, I'm really excited about what might be possible. Would you be willing to explore this with me? And here's what it will need. What part of this are you willing to do? So are you willing is a great way to make requests. Become intentional. So this practice of cervical awakening, cervical healing, it trains us to go inside more. Rather than looking outside of ourselves for answers, we turn within. And this is becoming a stronger and stronger part of my teaching. In the next version of Self-Cervix, I literally say, you're the teacher, and I want you to start developing this authority with your own body. What's right for you? What are you feeling? Not what everybody else is experiencing and feeling. We really have to start claiming this as we start to claim this new part of our body. We start to claim more of us as strong leaders of our experience. And then just looking at where you give your power away when it comes to your body. And I think I've covered this. It's sort of expecting others to know what to do to you. It's not speaking your desires. It's going to the doctor and just kind of letting them go for it in a fast, hurried way where you have to tense up. So it's shifting that entire paradigm and deciding that you're going to actually take some responsibility for your healing and for your pleasure. And in order to do that, here are some things that I need to do. Set boundaries and ask, make requests. So the cervix teaches us to go in and listen to our inner guidance. When we don't, we hurt, or we have to protect ourselves from feeling. Number 3, tension. So tension is definitely holding us back. And a big thing that I'm bringing into this next version of Self-Cervix is a big emphasis on relaxing. Right now, feel your belly and just let it relax. So that's all attached to your pelvic floor. And if your pelvic floor is tense, tight, again, there's not as much flow in the area. So we have to really learn how to relax and relax the cervix. So tension causes us to push towards, to push in and push too hard, right? And even like the idea of wanting to get to cervical orgasm, it causes a tension. I'll answer, let me just say, I'm going to answer your questions at the end. I'm nearly done. I'm assuming you can hear me. So when it comes to cervical work, what you want to be focusing on is, rather than that, so even pushing towards that goal, it causes this tension. We just need to actually give that up and And what we're learning to do actually is follow rather than push. So we're following what wants to happen next. We're following the pleasure. Yeah. So it's just a different way. It's kind of coming from a surrendered place of like, oh, moving in this way. Like we're being led rather than push. This is my will wanting it to happen. It doesn't work with cervical orgasm. Someone wrote on the board just yesterday morning, oh, Livia, I finally get the difference between clitoral orgasm and cervical orgasm. Clitoral orgasm is tense, and cervical orgasm has to come from a really relaxed place. Yes. Clitoral orgasm will be a more tense experience in the body. And cervical orgasm comes from a very relaxed state. And that's new, and it can be hard to first get because we have to give everything up, basically, to be very present to where we're at and trust. What's going to happen this time? I don't know. We're just sitting in that unknown space. Cervical awakening is a deeply feminine practice. Rather than pushing it requires us to open. To open, we need to relax. So in yin, the yin principle dilates, it expands and contracts. And that's what we're doing. That's what our cervix does. In order for our cervix to open, it requires relaxation. And we can practice this relaxation right now. What's so beautiful is we actually enter a state of effortlessness. There's nothing to do. It's just being, feeling, relaxing. So the sigh is what is in the new content in this version, really learning how to sigh with the cervix. And I want to offer this to you as something that you can do right this second, sitting in traffic, standing in a queue, having an argument. Just what is it to imagine that your cervix can sigh? I'm just doing it right now. Letting your cervix sigh, like just relax and open. Over time, this practice of relaxing and sighing, you'll start to generate no hands pleasure. And the more I've done this with the physical work, the more I can feel without doing anything except sighing and relaxing. And this is the biggest takeaway for me right now. And I hope that this is something that you can bring into your sexuality work. You know, when you're making love, relax. You don't have to pull. You don't have to pull the energy up. Just, it will happen by itself. Oh, harboring resentment. This is the last one. If our hearts are closed, like I said at the beginning, so will our bodies be closed. The last thing you're going to want to feel like is being intimate with yourself or with anybody else. And so I've written down the antidote here. Here's just something that you can do if you're feeling like you're angry or you've got resent. We have to learn to soften and open. And this is what the cervix does. It softens and opens when the conditions are right. First principle is being generous with the other person, taking the stance. They're doing their best. And this is what, Brené Brown talks about this a lot in her work. They're doing their best. And then getting into their shoes. A way you can do this is to list 10 times when you've behaved similarly. Now, a little caveat here. I am not talking about like big abusive trauma. I'm talking about the, loss of love, the anger at current or old partners, parents, siblings, anything that keeps you like shut. So you say, well, how are they behaving? So it might be, my partner isn't available. So then you would write down all the times when you've behaved, when you haven't been available for someone. And that kind of helps you go, oh, right, I see, I've done that too. And then you look at how this is benefiting you. So, for example, if your partner isn't available, this would benefit you because you have more time for yourself. You have more time for your practice. You get to spend more time with your friends. You get to do your creative work, right? So this helps to go, oh, it's not all that bad. Maybe there's a gift in here. And then getting honest, what expectations did you put on that person that are not a reality? I expected that person to be always there for me. But the reality is, that's not in their nature. And starting to look at, well, who are they really? Like, let's get honest. I put that on them. Develop stronger boundaries so that resentment is less likely to occur. So compassion happens when we're and when we're able to actually hold a strong boundary around us. So if you can't hold a boundary, someone is able to do something to you, and then you will resent them for it. When you're able to say no, or this doesn't feel okay, it's not okay, then it just kind of keeps the space clear. You feel proud of yourself, they know where they stand, there's no room for resentment, and it's much easier to feel compassion for them. So when we work on the cervix, we're working on our ability to say no and have boundaries, right? And then learn where are we holding back our emotional world? So we learn this de-armoring, emotional de-armoring. Okay, so to recap, there's number 1 and 2 would be self-avoidance and all the ways that we don't show up for ourselves, that we're not really giving ourselves the time that we need, and then we're expecting it to all just magically happen. Tension, how we're holding our bodies and we're blocking flow in the body, and then bringing way more awareness to how and what we're holding in the body. Unconsciously, we're holding this. Same with self-avoidance. A lot of this is just total unconscious, the way we divert our attention outside of ourselves. Placing power out there. This is also a conditioning, right? We're actually taught from a very early age. Authority happens out there. So we're turning that around. This is what the cervix is teaching us, to go inside, to be intentional, to listen to what is true for us. And then if we want to have cervical orgasm, cervical pleasure, more bliss, more ecstasy, we've got to heal the resentments, the things that fester and close our hearts. So the 5 frenemies actually teach us, when we self-avoid or harbor resentment, it shuts us down, it shuts down our pleasure. But what we're actually learning is generosity with self and other. Right? So self-avoidance is teaching us generosity with self and other, because you got to be generous with yourself if you want your cervix to heal and awaken. When we place our power out there, and then the disempowering, we feel the disempowering impact of not getting our needs met. We learn responsibility and develop a relationship to our truth. So this is what the cervix also teaches us. We feel the impact on our cervixes when our needs are not met and we're not taking responsibility for our boundaries. It hurts us. It's not true for us. So the cervix is standing there like, come on, woman, have a boundary, say, help me. And then when we hold tension, it affects our pleasure response. We develop self-awareness and we learn how to let stuff go. Cervix is teaching us where we can become more aware of the stresses that we hold on to and then make conscious effort to let them go. So that is today's class on the things that hold us back from cervical awakening. And these are all kind of principles that we learn in a program called Self Cervix, which is starting on the 1st of September. So I know a lot of you listening to this are already in this program, and I'm excited for you to join in and the next round and see the new content that I've been developing. If you are not part of the community yet, it is now open and you can become part of the community. So I'll get to your questions at the end. So in the first, it's like we present it in 3 weeks. You have this 3-week container where you can really focus on yourself and these things. But having said that, it's actually more like an 8-week course. There's about 8 weeks worth of content, but that's not really doable for our busy lives. So we hold it together in 3 weeks. I'm just gonna, I can't get to your questions. I'm so sorry with this thing up. Let me see if I can. Hold on. Yeah, I can't get to them yet. Just give me 1 second. I'm nearly there. So the first week we focus on developing a relationship with our cervix and getting these principles. Then we start to have guided practices into de-armoring and healing and releasing. And then we move into cervical pleasure and developing new pleasure pathways. There's lots of interviews with experts in sexuality and bonus content with supportive practices and resources. And oh, now I'm jammed. Hold on. So the program is $297, but you can use the 20% off voucher, and it'll be $237 US with the code September Journey. So so put in that code. If you go to purchase, you get 20% off, and that's valid for the next 24 hours. So make sure you jump in and get that while you can. So now I'm going to stop the share of the screen somehow. Oops. Here I am. Okay, so now I can get to your questions. Yes. Okay. So, yes, go to the website. So if you go to the website, selfcervix.com, you'll see courses. You go to self-cervix and then you put in that code where you go to purchase. It'll say redeem voucher, and what you put in is September Journey. Jess says she has to go to sleep. That is totally fair enough. Great, guys. So if anybody has any questions, please let me know. Any questions? You can talk to me about sex. You can talk to me about your cervix. You can talk to me about the program. No questions. Are you sure? Right. Well, if everybody feels complete, then I will leave this class here. Yes, here's a raised hand. Okay, so maybe instead of raising your hand, could you type your question into the chat box or into the Q&A? Q&A. Oh, okay, here's a question. I had a baby 3 years ago and I'm wondering how that affects, I'm assuming you're saying cervical stuff. So it depends on the birth. If you had if you had a quote unquote normal birth, then your cervix was probably functioning as it was. If you had any tears in your cervix, then you may have scar tissue on your cervix. If you had any kind of other trauma during your birth, then you may also have the effects of scar tissue, numbness and pain. And so you can work with all of this. You just need to learn how to work with your scar tissue. You can use castor oil on scar tissue, rosehip oil, massaging the scar tissue to break it up so that you can feel. Okay, next. This is kind of new to me. Does it have to be so complicated for women? I mean, do men have something similar? Yes, it's called up their butts. It's the prostate. And look, how many men are too afraid to touch their prostates? There's new research happening right now that is seeming to suggest that the prostate in a man's body could work the same as the cervix in a woman's body, because it could be that the vagus is connecting down to the prostate, but this is new research and it's just kind of happening. So that isn't confirmed, but that's the investigation. So, you know, I think that we have these special gifts as women. We are so sensitive. We're so intuitive. We need to feel safety. But, you know, like I said, I think these things all bring us into where we're supposed to be, this natural state. You have to understand, we come from hundreds of years of trauma as women that is sitting in our bodies. Epigenetics will say that things that have happened in our lineage 3 generations back. It's still sitting with us. So we carry so much trauma just because we're women. And so what we're trying to do is heal this, come back to a blooming natural place where we can just relax, because we're on guard so much because we're women. Because just by being women, it's not always safe for us. So we have these things that we have to overcome and to try and take our power back and create the conditions where we can relax. And it feels sometimes like it's our cross to bear, but what we can get when we can get there is hugely beautiful orgasmic pathways that are incredible, I will say, compared to what men can feel. So yes, we have some challenges, but we have these massive gifts, and so it's all worth it. So electronic format will the lessons be in? So the lessons, what electronic format? So the program is in a system called Teachable. It's online. It's classes that you watch. They're in small bites. They're about 5 to 15 minutes long, so that you don't have to watch like long presentations. You can just watch little bits as you go. So it's not in Zoom, but it is video. And when you sign up, you'll get a login to Teachable, and all the content will be in there from September 1. I had a 3rd degree tear, and I have scar tissue. Okay, so that's all right, Jill. Like, it doesn't mean that that's done for you. Like, I have scar tissue on my cervix because I had a Let's Loop procedure. It just means that we have a challenge to overcome. And like I'm saying, like, our injuries are our teachers. They're going to really teach you, Jill. This is going to teach you, wow, like, I need to start taking care of my cervix, giving my cervix some love. And this is going to require that I go inward, that I make some time for myself. I can see you have children, and I want you to also be realistic that when you've got kids, it's not necessarily going to be available that you're going to be able to do 45 minutes a day on your cervix, but you will do what you can, and maybe if you are partnered, this is a great time for you to ask for what you need and say, like, can we co-create this so that I can give this to myself? Will there be exercises that you teach that we can do with our partners? Yes, and I want to say the first thing is to do this on your own first. So this whole work is about you being able to heal yourself first, and then bring that into a partner. Because let me tell you, if you have trauma, if you have grief, if you have rage, and you haven't been with it on your own, it can easily project onto a partner. And this is very, very precious territory. So I want you to be able to hold space for yourself first, self-parent, self-partner, so that it doesn't kind of get put on your partner to heal you. Your partner becomes an assistant to you healing and pleasuring yourself. Is that a clear distinction? So rather than saying, hey, can you work on my cervix? It's more like, hey, I'd like to co-create a session where I feel where you work on my cervix, if that's okay. Would you be willing to spend this much time on it? Here's some things that might come up. Do you feel safe? And you go from there. I actually created an entire program around awakening the cervix with a partner, and it's called Being the Lover, and it's under the course's content. It's a long course, so I don't really put it out there, because the first thing that you have to learn how to do when you're with a partner is to get clear on the touch dynamics, because your partner cannot have like wounding around feeling rejected if their touch isn't okay, and you cannot get stuck in your conditioning around feeling like I can't ask for what I need. So it's kind of or you just get them stimulating your cervix and good luck. But that's the least empowering way to go about this. Is this like yoni massage? No. Yes and no. You are working on trigger points in your body. It may move into yoni massage, but it is more like holding points for long periods of time and feeling the muscle release and relax. So yoni massage is moving towards pleasure, and we are moving towards pleasure too, but with this we're de-armoring, which means we're looking at where we're holding tension, numbness, pain, and we're using those as portals to pleasure. Right? So we're using those places inside of us to develop new self-awareness and to find pleasure that way. And then, yes, it may go into yoni massage, but the truth is, once in my body, when I started to feel more, what I like to do now is just hold my finger very, very still on my cervix. There's no massage. I'm just holding it there, and it's like feeling a lot. This feels like the round that I'm going to jump into. Really, I joined 2 journeys ago. Is this still something I can join, or do I need to pay this round now? No, once you've paid, you're in. So you just have to make sure that you've got your login to Teachable. And good. And please, anonymous viewer, go in with a clear expectation on yourself and reason why, and keep that really close to you. Because as you know, going in and doing this work, it is confronting, which is why I did this webinar, because all of those things come up, self-avoidance. So even if you're not doing the practice, God, you get to see, wow, hey, I'm totally self-avoiding intimacy right now. What am I doing instead? So get really clear on why you're there and what is it that you want to achieve, because you can spend every day on your cervix for half an hour, and then you can expect that you'll start to shift sensation. If you practice sometimes, you can expect that you'll get a more clear idea of your tension and your pleasure points in your body. If you just watch the videos and do the meditations, you'll start to embody more and maybe clear shame and start to feel more. So just be realistic about what you want from the work, and then practice accordingly. Okay, let me go back. Can you share physical benefits of this practice? Yeah, there are so many physical benefits. You start to feel more during sex. You start to release trauma, so you start to consciously relax more. So there's been studies that shown that stimulating the outer ear, which is on the path of the vagus, helps women feel a sense of calm and well-being. And so stimulating the cervix, we've seen similar results. You get a sense of groundedness and well-being. And also working on the cervix, you move towards cervical orgasm, which is a deeper coming home into yourself, and then ultimately this what we call DMT release, or looks like DMT release, which is a psychoactive trip essentially that you can take, which shows you your connection to the entire universe. So that's a pretty nice benefit. Some people who have pain during sex feel that they can doing this work helps them reduce the pain during sex. They would be some of the main physical benefits. We also de-armor the clitoris because that can be numb. So more sexual pleasure, more feeling, less pain, less numbness, more embodiment. Does anyone see their cervix? You can get a speculum, which I really, really want to put on my site and promote this as something that we could do as part of our practice. I just haven't seen a way to do that that's easy yet. So you can actually order a speculum for yourself online and see your cervix. It's super lovely to see your cervix. Or when you go to the doctor and you have a pap smear, check out your cervix. Ask for a mirror. Yeah. Sometimes I've heard of, someone actually posted in the group the other day that they were bleeding and they sat on the toilet and their cervix was so low that they could actually see it with a hand mirror. But I don't know. That seems maybe that seems pretty low. They could have been seeing their G spot. I don't know, but you can see the cervix if you want. For health issues, I'm not. I would just like to have a caveat, like, as this is such new work, I don't know what all of those benefits are, but yes, hormonal balance. You're working with your sexual hormones. So if you're, for example, postmenopausal, perimenopausal, this is vital work to keep your juices flowing, to keep your hormones balanced. Look at why are we infertile? Is it the placement of the uterus? Is it that our cervix is like tense and not dilating when it's during sex? So this could affect fertility, but I'm not willing to say yes, it's going to. There just hasn't been the science done on it for me to say yes, this is unequivocally how you can heal it. I will say that anything that you're doing that is working in this part of your body is balancing your hormones and is like bringing love and attention and intention to this area. So it's great for fertility, but it's not science-based. So as regards to a woman feeling the need to feel safe, what is your feeling of women practicing this with a friend rather than a lover, someone there's not romantic interest, but someone you love and trust? Beautiful question. This came up in the last journey where someone had a friend doing it with them. And the only thing is, this is beautiful because there is no conditions placed on this. There's no romantic kind of expectations placed on the practice. It could be a really ideal scenario because there's no emotions invested in whether the touch feels right or not right, or whether it's being delivered properly. Or so in a way, it's a really, if you've got someone who you love and trust, that's a far less edgy territory than doing it with a romantic partner, especially at first, right? So as long as the boundaries are clear and the communication's clear, and you're not going to end up falling in love with this person and expecting something else, then that sounds great to me. Does the website show who the 10 experts are that will be in the 3-week program? I think it does say speakers right now. You can look there, but to be honest, they're changing all the time. The experts off the top of my head that will be in this round, Celia Rayfelt, she's a midwife from Berlin, an amazing, beautiful healer. Fiona Hallinan, she's also a midwife from Melbourne, an incredible healer who taught me about sighing with my cervix. There is shaman, beautiful Anna Maria Hernmark. I'm interviewing her about the need for us to ground down in earth as women rather than pulling up. Matt Schwentek's in there, the body worker who helped me with my cervix. Suzanne Rausgard talking about trauma healing. There's other interviewees talking about what to do with the feelings as they come up. So there's a lot, and I actually switch the interviews around, but they're all there available to you. You can pick, but I pick the ones that I play in the group live. So yes, you can still experience cervical pleasure. I don't know. That's a great question, anonymous viewer. I'm not sure about what the answer to that one is. So I'm going to leave that. But if you're using other contraceptive methods like the coils, then you can still affect cervical pleasure as long as you can touch your cervix. So I've actually never used a diaphragm, so I'm not sure where they're touching inside of your body. But if you can touch your cervix, then you're good with that. If you're there's a whole huge story around insertion of things into the cervix, which I'm not a fan of. So those barrier methods, there's too many trauma stories coming up for me to be able to sort of, we sort of say try natural methods as much as possible. But if you can touch your cervix, then yes, you can experience cervical pleasure. Emily, I have 2 questions. I'm interested in doing the upcoming course, but I'll be away for 1 week in September and won't have access to the computer. Should I do it at that another time? If so, when is the next one on? Um, I don't know how to answer that question. The the thing with the 3 weeks is that it's a concentrated time. It's actually a self-study program that you can do anytime at your own pace. You'll continue looking at the content after the 3 weeks because there's a lot of it. So it just depends on if you want to make the most of having the 3 weeks or if 2 weeks is enough for you. So you make, yeah, either or, like it won't matter. You'll still have engagement with the group, and you'll be able to continue your practice at the same time. We are in a secret group for the journey, and then there's the main Facebook group. It's a closed group that you're invited into, so you can continue asking your questions and you can get support in there as well. Cervix friendly form of contraception. Diaphragm covers the cervix. There we go. There's the question answered. So yes, I would say so. We're big fans of natural contraceptive methods, the Billings method. Yes, it takes a little bit more effort to learn, but that's where I'm sitting on the spectrum. I'm not prepared to tell someone to go and get a coil because I've read too many traumatic experiences. So I look into, I'm actually going to write a blog post. This question comes up all the time, and I'm going to put a resource on the site. So for now, I would say before you rush into getting a coil or anything inserted, look into the natural red tent and Billings method first of all. Yeah, and this is a great question for women in the group because there's so many different people on different natural fertility methods. Amazing teachers who can answer this question as well for you, but I'll put the resource in the website soon. Does this release DMT in their body, did you say? Yes. So one of the results when the cervix is fully opened and awakened, there are many testimonies of women who have these out-of-body kind of profound experiences where they receive downloads of information, where they experience their connection to the universe, where they travel through portals into different worlds. It's pretty cosmic. The thing is, there's been also no science on it. Science has dropped the ball on our natural DMT, but it does show up in mice and rats through the lungs and the pineal gland. And so we think that it's DMT released via the vagus nerve's connection to the cervix. So yeah, it's pretty incredible. And I'm just, full disclosure, I haven't had that experience yet. And it's kind of one of the magical reasons why I just believe in the cervix so much as this portal to self-realization, because it is not only the portal through which we are birthed, but we can also connect to a greater sense of connect back to our source through the cervix, which is pretty profound. Can a sex expert like a tantric expert help you with the cervix instead of a partner? Yes, look, we're creating an entire training for practitioners around this, as long as this is a very trusted person. Too often boundaries are being crossed, and also the power is put in the healer's hands, where they are doing to you rather than a co-created experience where you're in charge of your experience of your body. So as long as you trust this person, really feel like you can ask for your needs to be met, you can speak your desires and your boundaries, then sure, absolutely. Maureen, just send an email to support@selfcervix.com. Yes, like a body worker. Do you have a directory of those body workers? Yes, there. You'll see them when you jump in the program. We've got a list of people who've done the work. So they're not trained by us yet because that's only starting next year. But I have got a list of trusted people. What is your background that led you to teaching self-cervix? Do you find it a field that is growing in interest and in demand with where society is currently? Mira, you a journalist? I was working as a sex coach and sexologist. So I had a natural interest in how our sexuality is a path to self-realization. Like I said at the beginning of this webinar, I actually gave it all up because, yeah, I just gave up. It seemed like it was just so hard. There were too many boundaries and challenges and stigmas. And anyway, the cervix brought me back into it. So it wouldn't let me leave it alone. And so when I went after this healing experience with Matt, I started my own support group for cervical stimulation, which became Self Cervix. And I kind of just started coaching people in there using what I knew from my sex coaching and sexology background, but not knowing anything really about the cervix and what this all meant. So I've been on a path of learning and growing with everyone in the community, and that's sort of where I like to sit as a teacher, more like a facilitator. I bring in other people's voices. I believe that we can heal in community. I don't ever want to sit on a pedestal and be like, I've got all the answers. I keep directing this back to you as the teachers for your own bodies, and I bring in, and we're multiple voices doing this work together. And yes, I feel like there is a growing interest and demand in this with society. We're talking about, if we are talking about evolving and evolution and shifting into a new phase in humanity, we have to look at the parts of ourselves that are disowned and not claimed and still shamed, and start to integrate them into our being so that we become whole, and we can live as whole beings without having to hide parts of who we are, and to know who we are more fully. And as I said, the cervix provides us with all of these ways into self-realization. So I think it's really important. And I guess before that, I was teaching yoga, and I sort of thought, this is a load of shit, because we're talking about awakening and self-realization and self-actualization, but no one's talking about sex, and that just feels inauthentic to me. So the natural methods, as I mentioned before, there's going to be a resources document on the website soon. Billings method, red tent are good resources for natural fertility. And what is DMT? The acronym is, I cannot say it off the top of my head, but it's the natural psychoactive ingredients in plant medicines like ayahuasca. And it transports people on these healing journeys. So that's what DMT is. After watching your interview with Dr. Quebecer, I was able to feel my cervix for the first time. Oh, I was so happy. Yay. And found it is to my left side. Do you know why it is sometimes to one side? It's funny because mine is on my left as well, and a lot of people I know are on my left side. Now, you could come up with an energetic reason and say our left side is our feminine, our right side is our masculine. So you could kind of say, like, maybe we're more comfortable in our feminine side and we haven't integrated all those dark masculine qualities. Or you could just put it down to posture, how we hold our bodies, our dominant sides, because the cervix is attached to all these ligaments. So if your hips are tight on one side, it's going to pull on your ligaments. If your psoas is tight, it's going to pull on the ligaments. It's going to pull things over to one side. Yep, you could go an energetic route or a physical route. Trauma, you might have had an injury, which has also caused the muscles to tense up, which pulls the uterus out of alignment. Yeah. So, yeah, we love our cervixes where they are. And it's kind of cool that you know where that is, because now when you go to visualize it with your mind, you have a greater sense of how and where it is in your body to feel it. Haley, I haven't seen a question from you, but I can see your hand is raised. So if you want to ask your question, anyway. So that's it for questions. If anybody has a last question, I'm here for you. And Paula, can you ask? I can see your hand is raised, but could you please type in the box, because I can't bring your mic on. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining this. And if you would like to jump into the program, oh, here's a couple. The first part is, will you? Yes, you'll get a link sent to you after this. As soon as I've uploaded it, I'll send it to you. There is a question in the crap group, in the in the chat group for someone. Question in the. I can't. Oh, Haley. When will the next course come after this course? Well, theoretically November. However, I don't know yet what I'm going to do for that journey. I might be offering something completely different in November. I am yet to decide. But however, it could be that I'm also making this available for the November round, which starts November 1. Ali, I started listening a bit late today, and I'm curious about how having an anteriorly rotated uterus might affect this work. As long as you can touch your cervix, doesn't matter. Like, we've all got our cervixes in different places, so it doesn't affect the work as long as you can. What we're doing is working on the ligaments and tissue around the cervix. So and actually there's something in there in the bonus content where you can learn how to shift the position of your uterus with a mind abdominal massage thing. So it doesn't actually affect. If you can touch it, it's all good. And if you can't, you can use mind abdominal massage to bring it into a place where you can, or you can sit on the toilet as a way of feeling it. I'm wondering if it's still possible to still, yep, okay, I got that one. I feel numb and sometimes pain in my cervix. I recently heard about de-armoring. Is it possible to do this with my partner, or do I have to contact a professional? So, Katrin, that's what we're doing here, is we are de-armoring. And we're doing it on ourselves first. And this is really like claiming ourselves, claiming our body, claiming our ability to heal and feel. Now, there is a benefit from having someone do it on you. It's that sometimes you can feel things with someone else that you can't on yourself. And I think if you've heard the rest of this, I've already talked about the benefits and upsides and downsides of doing it with a partner, and also finding a professional that you can trust. If you missed that, it will be in the replay. But you do not have to contact a professional. At the moment, there's a list of trusted professionals with integrity inside the work. And you can do this with your partner, but there is a whole lot of emotional stuff that might come with the work. So I would always say, let's start de-armoring yourself first. And I would get a glass wand so that you can reach the cervix and use your finger, start working on it your own. Haley. Oh, Haley, am I seeing your questions? Yes, I saw your question now. Okay. Is there course content available for men who want to learn more about the cervix? What about the cervix in this work? I was going to make one for men, and then decided that I'm still not finished doing this for women yet. We're not done. I've got to complete this for women first before I can show. I mean, you can show men this. There's no reason why you can't show your partner this course. There is a course called Being a Lover, which is about partnering and touch dynamics, which is really important when it comes to being able to relax and release trauma and all of that stuff. But as yet, I haven't made it for men. However, I just thought of something. A couple of guys got in touch with me from London, and they want to make a brother program to self-cervix, which is super important, exciting. So look, watch this space. It's going to come. But first things first, let's be with that. Let's do this first. Let's complete this. There was talk about de-armoring the anus this round. Yeah, actually, it should be in bonus content. Oh, was there? I don't remember. Well, it was definitely in bonus content. And this program is going to be split into 2, which you'll have access to. And in that program, which will be called the Release Journey, we'll go into anal de-armoring more deeply. But it's the same principles, Melissa, just with your butt. Okay, I think maybe, is that it? Let's see. Yep. Okay, here's a question. I can see you, Haley. Okay, how much per day would you anticipate a woman should ideally spend on the course? It depends what you want to get out of it. So we have to be really real here. When I started this practice, I dedicated myself every day to working on my cervix for 21 days. And then in between journeys, I worked on it once a week or once every 2 weeks. And then I did another dedicated 21 days because I really needed to know what this program could do. There was a lot at stake for me. So if there's a lot at stake for you, you want to have cervical feeling and cervical pleasure, then you got to be real about you have to work on it. If though you want to just start to understand where your cervix is, where your pain points are, where your pleasure points are, and you want to develop this relationship with your body that's going to really impact how you engage with the world and intimately, then just practicing maybe 3 times a week during the program is going to be fine. And then also, if you've got babies and if you've got no time and all you can do is watch the content or read the board, then you're still going to be making progress on your self-knowledge, self-awareness, clearing shame and blocks, building up the mental reserve and the fortitude to actually take it on, and give this to yourself. So, Haley, it's like with everything with personal development and transformation. What you put in is what you give out. So there is a point in here's the other thing. Many women will just jump into the journey. They won't do it the first time. They might just sit around the outsides and learn. Then they might jump in the next time and do a bit. And then the third journey, they might decide, right, I'm going to do it fully this time. So it's a very intuitive thing. And I need you to be in charge of this for yourself. But I hope that gives you kind of an expectation there. Will you let us know where to get the crystal wand? Yes, that when you sign up, there's a recommended product list so you can purchase. Do you need to have a glass wand to do the journey? I would say it's a good idea, Emily, because it just gets to places where you can't with your finger. You said the cervix is related to sacral chakra, but would you say it is equally related to our root chakra? Totally. Yes. So, well, the thing is, to get to the cervix, you're actually going through your root, right? And it's at the root where we're looking at boundaries. So the root chakra is developing boundaries are a big part of healing. So to get to the cervix, which is this, you got to get through the gateway, right? Which is the portal. So yes, the cervix is the sacral chakra, but we are working also vaginally. So we're working on the root. And that means that we are developing this yes and no, this open and this close. And also our sense of home and belonging and our groundedness. The program is all about rooting down and expanding downward to earth rather than pulling up. I speak of this for the desire of being grounded. Yes, when releasing sexual energy, as I felt I'm leaving my body before when my energy moves up through the body and find it's important. Yes, and find it's important to bring it down, to stay in my body. What is your feeling with this? Absolutely, Mira. Absolutely. We go down before we go up. This is so important for us. And like a lot of teachings out there, like squeeze your pelvic floor and pull the energy up. And, actually it'll just do it on its own. But what we need to do is root down and relax down. And so we work with something called the expansion principle in the program, which is too much to go into here. But I'm philosophically in alignment with that, Mira. Anything else? Well, thanks for your amazing questions, everyone. And I really enjoyed presenting this to you because I'm so passionate that this is a practice not just for sex and our cervix, that's happy, that's beautiful, and it's also about our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to our world and our bodies, our sense of worth and place in the world as women. And look, the cervix is teaching us this. It's profound. So I hope to see you in the journey. Remember to use the redeem voucher September journey, and you can get 20% off the price. And I look forward to meeting you all September 1. All right, much love, and see you inside.